All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good 2 in the morning. Holy crap. Um, you guys are amazing. I'm just so thrilled that everybody's willing to show up at all these different times from all over the world. It's so cool. It means a lot to me. And I'm glad that we've got such a fun group. We just talked for 40 minutes, just sharing advice behind the scenes and different information about materials. I love all of that. So thank you guys for all being so cool. Thank you for letting me relearn how to use Zoom, and I'm glad it's working. Excuse me. And anyways, welcome to class 2 of the story in painting. And today it's about design and composition and guiding the viewer's journey, or a map for the painting. I'm going to actually jump ahead and do the demo first, or do it early, because my iPhone, I noticed, was almost dead, which is what we see here, the view from our easel. There we go. Everybody sees that?
Yeah.
Big orange canvas with some random paints up there. Not really random, but I'm going to go ahead and jump to that and describe what I'm doing. And I'm going to be using a system kind of called like a notan. Has everybody heard the term notan?
Yeah.
It basically means harmony within the lights and darks. Japanese term. I rarely use just a dark and a light. Think like the yin and yang symbol. I rarely use that. I actually prefer a 3 value system to kind of lay in my painting. I'm going to undo the pin here and do this one. So you can see behind me, these are just sketches that I've done. They're 30-inch by 40-inch. These 2 guys on the bottom here, you know, the tree on a cliff, and then kind of an ocean scene. And a lot of times, either in oils or acrylics or with pen and ink on paper, I do a lot of my planning with a very, very limited palette. I mean, a very limited value structure, meaning the lights and the darks. The less I use, oftentimes the more successful I am in the future. Let me read a great quote from an article by John McDonald, who's a really great teacher, a really great painter. But he's talking about John Singer Sargent, who's one of my very, very, I think he's the greatest American painter ever. John's, and this is reading my highlights from his article here. John Singer Sargent once stated that nature gives us endless colors, but few values. It took me years to understand that he was advising that we shouldn't do what we should do in our paintings. Let the colors run let the colors run riot, but limit the number of values. He recommended that a painting be restricted to no more than 5 major values. The foundation values, this leaves us with 4 choices of foundational values when we build a painting based on 2, which would be a notan, 3, 4, or 5 values max. Among these choices, I found 3 values to be the most versatile and effective, and he calls it the power of 3, which I really like. I really like when somebody gives an idea a name so I can remember it. But it's funny, you know, I've always said that, you know, whenever I'm reading art books or watching videos, if somebody says what I'm already doing, I just figure they're a genius. So anyways, good job, John McDonald. I agree with you. I think that 3 values, oftentimes, I mean, sometimes I'll get into 4. 2, I find very limiting. The whole notan, you know, just a lot of teachers will instruct their students to just use a permanent marker, or, you know, let me see here, you know, something kind of like this to just do their design, which is a great idea for super simplification, you know, when you're doing your sketches. But I actually like the 3rd value as well. So kind of a highlight, a low light or a dark, and a mid value. When we are thinking of this, especially if you live somewhere that's super atmospheric, like the Pacific Northwest where I live, where you get a lot of fog and haze, a lot of times those, even though you have a dark, a light, and a mid, they can be really condensed because of the fog, right? So you won't have dark darks or you won't have light lights. So even your darkest dark is not a black and your whitest white is not a white. So they kind of exist within a limited value. But I've also found that, you know, just using this painting behind me as an example, this is kind of some rocks. I don't, maybe you can kind of tell what it is. Maybe it's too messy. I can never point behind me when the camera's reversed. There. You can see that I have kind of, especially if you squint your eyes at it, and you guys have probably heard the advice that when starting a painting, squint, right? Have you guys heard that before?
Yeah.
Right. And what that's doing is you're all of a sudden looking through your eyelashes and it just kind of blurs the scene a little bit. But what it does is it simplifies values. So if you're looking at me right now, go ahead and squint. Or if you're lucky enough, you can just take your glasses off. Um, and what it does is it simplifies values. All of a sudden, you see these connections between the darks throughout this image. And all of a sudden, you see the lights. Where's the window? Over here. Yeah. And you know what I mean? It simplifies. And all of a sudden, you're finding these links and how things lay in space. It really helps us to do the main thing I talked about last week is we don't paint things, right?
Yeah.
We paint values, colors, edges. Yeah, exactly. Temperature. The image, the thing will show up if we put those down correctly. One of my favorite quotes, I think it was Kevin McPherson says that painting is easier. You know, I'm bastardizing the quote here, but painting is easy. All you have to do is put the right values, the right colors, and the right shapes in the right places. But then it's a whole lifetime of trying to figure that out, right? And that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump up to the easel in just 1 minute after I read this week's handout. Hopefully everybody got that in the email. And I've also posted it to our Padlet page. And this, just like last week, was kind of a synopsis of what we're going to be going over throughout. We're going to, Michelle was talking about how last week was just like a fire hose, basically, of information, and we cover so much. And that's true, especially in the first couple classes. But what's going to happen is we're going to slow down and we're going to get into more detail, more information about these really important facets to helping us tell a story within our painting, and then different aspects within that. So class 2, design and composition, guiding the viewer's journey, a map for your painting. Your visual story. The 3 things we're going to be covering a lot in this class are foreground, which we'll get into next week. The foreground is the opening line. It sets the mood and invites the viewer in. This is going to be a big thing with trying to decide how to use your photos as references. The primary subject, right? This is something that we all lose sight of when we're painting because there's so many beautiful parts to our image. But what is the primary subject? What is the heart of the story? The emotion or visual climax here. The supporting elements, right? You're going to hear me talk about a lot of using a lot of theatrical metaphors. I like to call the primary subject is the prima donna. And then you have your supporting characters or the supporting elements. These are your side characters. They add richness, context, and depth. Okay. So we're going to be talking about that a lot. Tools to lead the eye. Use these visual cues to guide the viewer. The leading lines, which is going to be a big part of what we're working with today. Paths, rivers, fences, branches, anything that points the way. Light direction. Like a spotlight, it highlights often what matters most. color contrast, and then I should have added value contrast, meaning lights and darks. So we have color and value contrast, or just, you could even just scratch out color and just have the word contrast. Helps the eye land where you want it to. Design elements that bring your painting to life. All right. So I'm going to read the element first, what it does, and how to use it. All right. So line, this one is going to be really important today. Guiding the eye and adds movement. Try contour, leading, or implied lines. We'll talk about implied lines more when I'm working with less of a no-tan painting. Shape. Shape defines space and form. Mix organic and geometric shapes for interest. Color. Color sets the mood and emotion. Play with harmony, play with contrast, and play with temperature. Temperature meaning warms and cools within the image. Value. This is my favorite thing in painting, is the lights and the darks. Value adds depth and form. And we're going to go into this in a big way in an upcoming class here soon. Use light and shadow to sculpt your scene. Texture. We're going to be doing a lot with texture when we're talking about the foreground and leading the viewer in. Texture adds tactile richness, vary brushstrokes and media for effect. Space. Space creates depth and relationship. Use overlap, scale, and atmosphere. Any questions on the elements, the design elements here? And these, of course, are not all of them. That's just a small section out of about the 30 that I have on other handouts. But those are the ones we're really going to be focusing on that I think will really help us to convey our idea and our story. All right, design armatures. This is your composition's backbone. Does everybody know what I mean when I say armature? If you think about sculpting, it's like the wires that you would put up. Let's pretend we're sculpting a figure with clay, and you use a metal armature to kind of create the big shape of the figure. And then you would add the clay around that. Armature is the backbone. Think of design armatures as the scaffolding behind your painting. It helps you place elements with intention and creates visual harmony. It is not a rule. This is something that I find with a lot of my students, and something I need to reiterate, is armatures are not a rule. They're just a helpful guide. Okay.
It's like creating a roadmap.
Exactly.
Where do you want the eye to go and how do you want it to get there?
Yeah, it really is. And then it really helps with balance. Yeah, all the things, movement, all of it. So yeah, armatures are fantastic, especially once you learn to recognize them. Think about 2 or 3 sessions ago, we spent a lot of time with armatures, and I think people just had so much fun. I was having students go back through, master's paintings and stuff, and just try to find the armature or armatures. Sometimes there's multiple within a painting that they were using. And I think that was really a useful tool. So if that's something that you guys would like me to spend some time on in this class, we can talk about that again. Okay, Edgar Payne's Wisdom on Composition. This is, I don't have his book here. No, Edgar Payne has a really great book that's really difficult to read, but there's just a couple middle pages in there that have the different armatures and things. But he has great advice in that book. From Composition of Outdoor Painting, Payne offers timeless advice. Big shapes. This is so important. Start with bold, simple shapes. They are your foundation. No tan. Balance light and dark for a strong visual impact. And he uses the word balance, but he doesn't mean like a 50-50 balance. He means to, if you want the focus into the darks, there might be more darks. Or if, it might be more light. A lot of times I'm looking for a mathematical equations at about a 70-30. I find if I do half light and half dark, it gets boring, just like putting the horizon line right in the middle, kind of flattens and makes the piece feel really still. Abstract pattern. Look beyond realism. See the dance of shapes and values. variety within unity. Keep things interesting, but connected. That is a good challenge. That may be part of the homework for this week. Rhythm, use repetition and variation to create flow. I think a bunch of you guys got to see Linda Morgan O'Connor's painting she turned in, which was super dynamic, colorful sky. And then she had this little dance of trees silhouetted against it. And it really helped with the rhythm and hold the piece together. Is really interesting. Dominance, choose a focal point and let it shine. Balance, whether it's symmetrical or asymmetrical, aim for harmony. Experiment and trust your instincts. These tools are here to support your voice, not silence it, right? I hate to say rules for painting, and I'll catch myself saying that still, but the truth is they're guidelines or just helpful tools, right? Any and all of these things that I've shared with you today and through the rest of the class are just guidelines and ideas, ways to check your painting, ways to check what's going on. But of course, the best part about learning rules is so that we can break them in a creative and educated way. All right, homework, or at least an idea for homework. Your homework's always whatever you guys want to paint, whatever you're working on. I just hope that you're including and reflecting on the things we're covering in the class. So the sketch and reflect for this week is create a thumbnail sketch that shows the foreground, middle ground, and background. You can even add arrows to it to show how you want the viewer to travel through the painting. It's a really great little tool when you're doing little tiny thumbnail sketches to try and figure out the painting. So again, if I'm looking at this ocean painting, which is going to have a lot of color, it's going to have a setting sun, it's going to have, you know, lit and shadowy sides on the waves, but you know how I want the viewer to move through it is I'm trying to create a bit of a zigzag or almost a S shape into the foreground to get the viewer into it. I just hinted at the little bit of light in the sky to kind of reiterate that as I get to the top, because I don't want it to be boring. I want to keep the viewer moving through the piece, right? I'm kind of thinking they'll come in through here, go up to the rock, find that interesting, bounce around. I'm also going to have my strongest light on this side to counterbalance the interest on this side. So I'm thinking about that as I'm going through. A lot of times when I'm working on my painting, especially in the beginning stages, I almost do like a little visualization of somebody walking into the gallery, seeing my painting, and how I want them to react, how I want them to look at the painting, and then I work backwards from there. Okay. Not always, but a lot of the time. My goal is when somebody walks into a gallery and there's 100 paintings on the wall, right? I want mine to be something special that draws them in, that you know, they have all these 100 paintings to walk up to, but they see mine. And again, this is just the idealized version. And there's something that draws them in from 50 feet away, right? And that is almost always design and contrast of the lights and the darks. Could be colors that draw them in. And then I want them to get closer and closer and closer to my painting. I want them to eventually get where they're within a couple inches and just checking out the paint and my application. But to get them to that stage, I have to attract them from across the room, right? You guys have all done that, right? We've all walked into a gallery, you know, so much and our brain is overstimulated, but all of a sudden something pulls you in to one particular image. And it could be the subject, it could be the colors, but a lot of times, at least the things I focus on are design and value contrasts, right? My next goal is for them to go, hey, Cheryl, you've got to get over here and check out this painting. Forget all those other 49 paintings. Yeah, and then my next goal is to have them take it off the wall and take it home. But so there we go. Any questions on kind of the ideas for today a little bit? Oh, you're muted, Jada. I can see you talking.
I ran across in my thing. If you saw it, I had in my mind that high attraction of that little slit of bright light down here, and that's going to attract everything. What I failed to do, because I'm imagining on top of some images that were there, they had a certain value range, and instead of putting the appropriate value range, I got involved with the colors and everything else. I did the classic mistake of just paying, and I got worried because it was a cloud that needed to be dark. And I thought, how do I make it look like a cloud and be dark? And I didn't really address the dark. I just kept worrying about the cloud and the color and the cloud. And it wasn't until I saw some of your paintings of the skies with that effect that I love, which is with that brilliant little light up against that dark sky. And I realized, oh, I forgot to make it dark.
Yeah, it's really funny how we understand how the eye moves, but we'll get so distracted by a certain area of the painting. And that's why I think it's really great for me to kind of do these big studies, or do my thumbnails and really just say, here's what's important: the lights, the darks, the movement through the piece. And then I can go crazy, just like the quote we just read from John Singer Sargent, that you can go crazy with color. Right? Color's limitless, but values are limited. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'm going to jump up to the easel and start squishing some paint around and see what happens.
This is Brett. Sorry I missed the first half an hour. I had trouble with the link for some reason.
Yeah, I think a lot of us did. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's what happens when you do the new one. Hopefully everybody just had to sign in with their Zoom account.
No, it was not letting me on. Eloise sent me the link, so I was able to get on. So anyway.
Oh, are you not getting my emails?
I got the first email. I tried to link on to the one from the original one, but I didn't get any of your emails this week.
Okay, shoot me an email just because I won't remember in 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Shoot me an email really quickly, making sure that I have you linked. Anybody else not get the email this week? Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and spotlight the easel. I'm going to step up there, and I'm going to be using a reference photo that I took this weekend, actually. So my wife and I took a couple of days out at the coast, and right beside where we were staying was this really kind of cool little trail down to the beach. So that's the ocean down behind there. And so this is the next morning. When we first got there, we just happened to get there as the sun was setting. And I just thought this was such beautiful movement and shape, and that's such a great kind of a silhouette, right? It almost is like a no-tan. Again, if we squint our eyes looking at this image, it's just really just dark and light. It has this really interesting movement throughout the piece. So I thought that would be a great exercise for this class. I added the references to the Padlet if anybody would like to look at it. Are you guys cool if I use that as my reference for today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. So what I did was I just put on Indian yellow, letting that sit for a couple minutes, and then I added just a thin wash of the transparent earth red, and now I'm just going to kind of wipe that away. What it's done is it's sat there long enough that it has stained the canvas, or the panel in my case. Let me move this camera over just a little bit, otherwise you're going to be looking at the back of my head. I'll just move this over here. There we go. Everybody sees that okay?
Yeah.
So again, I'm just kind of wiping away the extra paint thinner that's kind of on there. I added a little bit of paint thinner just to move it around. But also the main thing is I was just kind of hoping to stain my panel. All right. Now my next thing is, for those of you who have been in my classes, one of the very first marks I make when painting a landscape is, does anybody want to say it?
Horizon.
Horizon. The horizon line basically locks in my piece. It's a little over a third up would be the horizon line on the ocean. So I'm just gonna quickly just make a little bit of a mark. So I love T-squares for this. Nothing worse than doing a beautiful painting only to realize, oops, I think I put it too high. So I'm gonna measure that to that. So I'm gonna move it down to here.
T-squares are only a problem when you hand cut the board in the first place and didn't do a good job on the edge.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, I've had that issue a lot of times. And even buying cheap boards and panels where they don't create good, strong lines. I'm just gonna quickly pull up two examples of paintings that are kind of done a little bit like this, where I just kind of start with my big shapes, right? So again, squint your eyes at this and you can see this just no tan, almost dark and light. And then by doing that and establishing everything, I was able to come back in and, you know, create the texture and the different transitions, the fog, different effects like that. Here's maybe even a better example. This is a painting I started in a class with acrylics. Actually, both these paintings were started with acrylics. And you can really see my design lines that I used were really established. And then as I come back in with paint, you know, oil paints on top, I'm able to create the fluctuations in temperature, color, lights, darks, adding the cool greens versus the warm reds, and really able to build it up. But a lot of times for me, the starting of a painting is, again, the foundation is really helpful. Here's an example of one that I haven't worked through very far. I've just kind of got it started, got my big shapes, my big colors. And this one is just all about this big sweeping tree here on the coast. And so now I will be able to come back in and add the light into the tops of the trees, you know, add highlights to the branches, add information into my foreground. So it's not just this big dark silhouette.
Were these all invented from your imagination or were they all based on?
Half and half, I guess, most of them. I usually will start with some kind of a reference of some sort. If you've seen, you know, my past class videos, I use this creek because it's right over the hill from where I live in a little wetlands bird sanctuary area. And it's super easy. It's 15 minutes driving. And this creek, and I just use it limitlessly. It's just a beautiful, simple, swooping shape. And so I've done this creek hundreds of times, maybe now. And it's a great reference. And you can find references for that creek on our Padlet. It's just a wonderful, simple, and what's great about it is they all end up different. Like I'll just start, you know, playing with the trees, restructuring the background. I can add any sky and colors I want into it. So a lot of times when I'm not sure how to or what to do, or I have been painting for a while and I just want to have fun or use up leftover paint, I will return to that creek because it's something that's very comfortable to me and very known.
What
So
creek is it?
What creek is it? It's in the Tualatin Bird Refuge.
Okay.
Tualatin River
Yeah.
wetlands area off Roy Rogers Road or off Highway 99.
I love
So
that
I'm
you
just
just
using
gave me permission to use the same image over and over. That's great.
yeah, I mean, Monet did his haystacks and the big cathedral over and over and over. So I figured if Monet can do it, we can do it. We're going to be okay. So looking at this reference, right? And just thinking of lights and darks, it's got this really nice movement in there. And then I love the shapes of and the negative shapes within the trees. So I'm just going to be kind of thinking about these big shapes. And in the beginning, it can be quite cartoony. And actually, I want to move that down. So I'm just writing little notes to myself. Where are the high points, the low points, how do things interact? Right, you'll notice that this entry point to the beach, I didn't put it right in the middle. I could, and it might still work, but I like things to be a little off center, and I'm constantly looking for a unbalanced balance, an organic structure that at the same time feels naturalistic, but not rote, not like a computer made it, or it's not like a British garden where everything's in its perfect rows. Because my brain instinctually wants to do that. I'm constantly out there trying to organize nature. And so that's a bit of a battle for me. I think some of you guys are so good about really letting your nature be natural. Whereas others of us all of a sudden just start over organizing our trees, our paths. And again, these early little lines are just notes for myself. And I can just kind of keep changing my mind at this stage and just going, this should be a little higher, this could be a little lower.
So I have a question. This is Darlene. If you could possibly send a copy of your daylight picture, because when I printed mine off, the foreground is nothing but black. So I have no idea how to put detail there.
Right. And that's literally, woke up the next morning and went back so that I could get that information, because yes, when I got home, I was like, oh, it's all just wiped out, right?
Yeah, that's just black. So I don't know how to deal with that. Thank you.
Yeah, but what's great about this, Darlene, in this stage is that this is the information I want early on, right? If I have all of this information, I can get kind of locked in, right? And distracted. And all of a sudden I'm bringing it in. But if I'm thinking more of a no-tan, so even if we're using this image, squint your eyes and you really see a light and dark pattern, right?
Yeah.
This actually becomes, even though it's much lighter, probably becomes dark if you're really squinting and thinking of a two value, a light and a dark.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So a lot of times I'll even just push, even if I only had this daylight picture on my computer, I might still just really push the contrast really high so that I'm losing that information in the beginning. I am not thinking branches. I am not thinking pine needles. I am not thinking, any of these things right now. I'm just thinking, what's an interesting form? What's an interesting shapes? What do I like about these positive, meaning like the darks, or the negative, which might be the lights of the sky? And I'm looking from within that. And my favorite, or one of my very favorite art styles besides the tonalists, is Art Nouveau, right? I just love those beautiful curvy lines of Art Nouveau, buildings and furnishings and everything else. So I'm constantly kind of thinking like, how can I, and excuse my language here, but how can I find sexy shapes, sexy lines within this? I don't think that that's the best terminology, but it's just the terminology I was taught in college. But it really, we had a big exhibit here in Portland a number of years ago about Art Nouveau, where they had cars and motorcycles and, furnishings. And I just loved the swooping movement through the pieces. So I'm thinking about that. It's almost, again, finding the dance, right? What is interesting about how these lights and darks connect, right? What else can I do to, maybe even make it better? Like over here, you see this real straight line and this very solid shape. So over here, I'm already thinking about like, what can I do to maybe make that a little even more interesting? And what's great about this technique with the wet into wet here is that it's movable, sculptable. I can come back in and wipe back away. I've got some time to, get down my darks. And then I've got some time to move things around and change my underlying structure, And we would all probably do this differently. I mean, pick different shapes and forms and feelings of movement. I really like canopy shapes, always have. I think it's because I grew up surrounded by oak trees and I just loved climbing up into oak trees. And I just found that canopy shape to be very protective and very friendly. And so I'm constantly looking for that kind of umbrella, that kind of canopy shape in my work or in my environments that I paint. And it's going to be different. Some people really like triangles, and we'll look for, they might make this shape more of a triangle. They might make this shape more of a triangle. I'm not talking about perfect pyramids by any means, but we're all drawn towards different colors, different scenery, different subject, but within that, we're also drawn towards just shapes that we like.
So this is
and
just
structures.
What's your point of interest here? Because at the moment, the lines lead me down to the bottom, that cup shape.
This path, right?
Right there. So then I go, well, am I supposed to be looking at that distant vista behind that? Is that
The
really
ocean back here?
Yeah. Is that where you're aiming me?
No, I'm actually gonna, once we get painting, I'm actually gonna lose that line. It's gonna become very soft and hazy. But I just put it in so I know where the earth exists. And again, you can just see I'm just using kind of a big messy brush. You guys could be as, as clean and as detailed, as big or smaller brushes as you want. I just find for me, oftentimes, especially when I'm dealing with branches, trees, marshes, my favorite kinds of things to paint, oftentimes these big brushes just help things to stay loose. I'm not overly rendering anything. I'm just kind of feeling out my positive, negatives, my lights, my darks. I'm using my reference, but at the same time, I'm not copying my reference. So do you guys kind of feel a bit of a movement through here, or is there something I could do to make that movement stronger and more successful?
Well, it's so early on with only one color there.
Yeah.
And it seems like a circular composition.
Yeah,
Somewhat.
it is a semicircular, isn't it? I'm trying to
Yeah.
keep you within this space while inviting you to go out and explore, but I'm also trying to bring you back.
Yeah, like or a tunnel. Yeah, I've heard
I
it
think
described as a
once
tunnel.
you get the tree trunks in,
It'll
you
really
can
help, won't it?
direct
we'll
it
really,
more.
yeah, we'll really get that. So what I'm going to
Definitely.
do is I'm going to add a bit of ultramarine blue to this brown, and you'll see that it becomes a very dark color. All right, the more blue I add to that, the cooler it'll feel. The more brownish red that I allow into that, the warmer. And sometimes I will create almost two piles of that. So I know on the right side is my warmer browner. I don't know if you guys can see a difference there on the screen.
Yeah.
And on my left, I can really add a lot of cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and even just grab a bigger brush.
The shapes feel a little more angular than undulating at the moment. And I don't know whether that's because the light tones.
Yeah, let's see what happens when I
Went down
start.
and look at the light tones. It looks more
let's see what happens when I start filling it in here. Because again, I'm just thinking kind of an almost no tan, right? Almost just lights and darks. There's a little bit of a gradation in the temperature, meaning I can have it a little cooler and, you know, the dark, deep darks here. And I can have it a little warmer where the light's creeping in from behind. You know, this is a kind of a dark forest you walk down through to get to this entrance to the beach. And I really found that kind of magical and interesting. And that's kind of something I want to try to capture. But at the same time, I don't want it to be super scary. I want it to somewhat be inviting. Or maybe you're just like, I got to run through this dark forest so I can get down to the lit beach, whatever it is. But I guess the main thing, one of the main reasons I picked this image was because of its strong no tan or, you know, very limited value structure. And again, with the knowledge that I can add all the detail I want, I'm looking for that foundation to my painting, that underlying structure. Because I could start with this and easily turn it into this, right? Just by adding more paint. I'm just looking for my design. I think that a lot of people think like that doing the underpainting, the value structure, is a big waste of time. But I've had so many students who've come back and like, you know, I fought doing it. I didn't want to do it. You know, it feels like I'm doing two paintings. But when you have a good, strong underlying structure to your painting, then you can have so much fun with color and temperature shifts and edge quality. And it almost feels like cheating when you get your design laid in and you feel good about it. I'm not quite feeling great about it yet.
Right.
And I oftentimes think of this stage as, you guys remember the old Polaroid photos?
Yeah.
Right? And you had to like, you took your picture, this came out of the camera and you started waving it around to let it to start developing in the air. And that's what this stage of the painting oftentimes feels like, is that it's slowly appearing in front of me, I hope. And if not, then I have good insight to, you know, what areas maybe need to be modified, what areas need to be adjusted. Oftentimes too, it's darks and lights, but I'm also thinking big shapes and small shapes, because a lot of you guys would probably want to put in all these tree trunks, which is fine, you know, early. But a lot of times I find that, especially if I'm doing kind of a somewhat subtractive style of painting, that those tree trunks can become very distracting and very precious to me.
Is that a Home Depot brush?
Yeah.
Like a chip
It's-
brush. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just got a longer handle to it. So sometimes that's nice, especially when I'm trying not to hit the camera with my head. Need that little bit of a longer handle. It also allows me to sit back just a little bit further so I can continue to look and judge and see what these shapes are doing. All right, let's go ahead and put in, let me grab a little bit finer of a brush. I don't need too perfect of information here. And I'm just going to put in a couple of those tree trunks Mostly so your conscious will be a little quieter and stop screaming, I don't know what's going on. So I'm going back to my reddish. I can add a little bit of dark, but I don't want it to be overly dark at this stage. And I'm looking in and just saying, okay, I like these interesting shapes over here. I like this big strong one here. Go ahead and put in kind of the edge of the surf, just so I kind of know the darkest parts of my beach. All right, that's the shadow side of the surf. Actually, in the, anyways, that's notes to myself. And add some hinted at lines to how I want the viewer to move through back here. Gonna add just a touch of paint thinner because I'm finding this paint really dry. So a lot of times when I'm doing something like a tree trunk or something a little more fluid, a touch of paint thinner will help the brush to move. I'm going to move the panel over so I'm not blocking and so I'm not stepping in front of the camera as much. My arm. I'm looking for some of these big shapes, so sorry you were not going to see what I'm doing there. But just kind of bringing in a tree trunk. Isn't that funny? Already, when you guys just saw this line and all of a sudden these things are not as floaty, doesn't it make you feel a little bit better? Like that grounding, even though it's not well done, but the transparent earth red I'm using is a fast matte color, meaning has an alkyd in it, so it dries faster. Just happens to be the tube I pulled out, but it's much slower, meaning much stickier. So a little bit of paint thinner should hopefully help that slip and slide along. All right, I've got this tree right on the edge here. And I'm trying to think of which movement do I want? Because I don't want it to be straight up and down like it is in my photo. Would I like it to do something like this, where it turns in, or would I want it to turn out? And I'm kind of thinking I'm going to continue this circular shape a little bit, and I'm going to bring something like that. You see how that continues this motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Feels nice, doesn't it? If it
Another,
didn't feel nice, I would just wipe it away and try something else.
Then she,
another clever little trick of yours. I love this going from the bottom up instead of the top down on these strokes.
A lot of these, because you want the tree to be wider. I'll do this with my left hand if I can. I can't. Sorry, left hand is only for holding down paperwork.
No.
But the brush, when I push down, will make a nice thick stroke, and then I can lift it as I'm moving up the thing, up the image. So it's kind of a pull, and all of a sudden you get these, more organic. Nothing destroys the illusion of a tree more than having it be wider in the middle of the tree or up towards the top. You really, and these brushes, let me get a softer brush. There we go.
It's just easier to do it this way. And I'm amazed at how much easier it is than going from top down.
Right. And I will do top down, but what I'm going to do is just change the pressure. So at the top would be barely any pressure. And then as I come down, it gets, thicker. So I'm just going to make a mark. This is going to be horrible and I'm going to erase it. But you'll see if I barely touch and then start pushing down, you see how much wider it gets?
Yep.
Right? I don't want a tree there, so get rid of that guy.
But it's
So
also, arm control is easier going from down below. I don't know why maybe it's just me. I don't know. I just realized.
When I have a lot of branches to do, I turn my whole thing upside down. I do
So
them.
you do it, yeah.
And like they don't get quite as repetitious. And but I just find it makes a nicer looking branch because I have this tendency to make it too heavy at the top.
Yes, and a lot of us do. I mean, I'll think I'm doing a great painting and then only realize in the afternoon that, yeah, I'll top heavy trees that they're. So I've got this one bending in, maybe something to kind of counterbalance that coming off the back end. That's kind of nice. What's really great is that there's these beautiful root structures hanging off the side of the cliff. So I'm going to come back in, re-emphasize my cliff, and then you get these cool twisty roots hanging off the side. Isn't that fun? That was rhetorical. I don't even care. I'm having fun.
It is fun, but your C isn't in yet, so would they be in the way?
What's that?
You haven't painted the water yet, so would they be in the way?
Yeah, they're kind of cutting into the path hanging off the sides of this cliff. So we got another nice little root over here off these trees. And I might have saved this detail. I just kind of wanted to share it with you guys. So let's go ahead and grab a big brush. And I'm going to smush this out now. Maybe I should use my big soft brush. This might be a little strong and it seems to have some paint thinner in it. So might be asking for a bit of a disaster fee here, but we'll see. So a lot of times when you guys see me do kind of the subtractive tonalist style, you'll see me kind of cover the whole thing, right? And then just really get in there and start wiping away. But this is another way I like to do it, especially when it's pretty big, like 16 by 20 here, right? If I covered the whole thing, I'd be wasting a lot of paint because I'd be pulling off so much paint. Let me grab our favorite giant fan brush to get rid of that glare. Isn't that funny? So weird. Lighting is weird.
When I do my acrylic wipeaways on linen, then I do them this way. I do a small piece at a time and work it in rather than wipe a lot of it away.
That's the same way I do it too, Cheryl.
Oh, good. So, but now what I have is the ability to now go in and wipe away. You were saying, I think it was Linda was mentioning, like, I don't even know where the ocean is. Like, you kind of can see a little bit of a faint line. And actually, I'm going to lower it because if you'll notice, the hillside here is exactly the same. So I'm going to lower my ocean just a little bit. And that yellow really sat on there. So I'm going to go ahead and dip my finger into just a touch of paint thinner and see what happens here. There we go. And this is another reason I normally maybe wouldn't have put in my trunks of my trees, because now I have to wipe around those silly trees. But it's not a big deal because I can bring them back, right? These are, again, notes for myself. I could come back in and completely, if it doesn't turn out as a wipe away tonalist painting, it's not a problem. And then I just have a nice underlying structure.
And just to bring up the difference between a canvas and a panel,
Yeah.
doing
Big
that
time.
on a canvas would be very difficult.
Yeah,
because
you'll get a
color
lot of
would be-
weird texture.
Yeah. The pigment would be locked into the texture of the canvas.
Yeah, and I did let this yellow sit longer than, maybe I normally would. But it's
There's no
okay.
doubt
I wanna-
about where the focus is now.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to see, isn't it? Yeah, there's no like debate where I want you to look. Right? And why is that? Like, what about that I just did makes that happen?
That's a contrast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Light and dark.
Contrast of lights and darks. That is our friend. It's one of the greatest and most underutilized tools in our toolbox is
That and compliments.
yes, exactly. And I think of lights and darks as complements to each other almost, right? That, it's like a color complement or a temperature complement.
So if you were to add a lot of purple into your darks, that would make it pop.
All the more.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Again, sorry for my head getting in there.
So for this lifting out stuff, that opening color is sort of critical. 'Cause
Yes, I do believe that's true. And I'm getting back, like it looks really glowy, but I could get, sorry, I'm just holding a super dirty paper towel. I can get it back to almost the white of the canvas or the panel.
Yeah.
If I want to in certain areas.
Yeah.
And then what I love is that penumbra, that glowing area around. But that's a personal thing. That's become part of my style, part of my technique. I'm also, you've probably heard, especially if you've been in my class, I am dyslexic. So I always wonder if, me working from back to left, working in what a lot of artists would consider a backward way, where I'm almost sculpting using the negative shapes. And again, I just don't know. I don't have any scientific literature to back me up on that. But I do think about that. And I do notice with some of my students in the past that, maybe have been diagnosed with, dyslexia or slight dyslexia, that they're just like, oh, this is so great. This really works with my brain. And other people, you more neurotypical analytical side. I'm talking to you, Cheryl. But this technique sometimes is a little weirder and trickier. And again, I'm not telling you this is the way to paint. Not by any stretch. I'm just telling you that this is a way to paint. This is a way, even if it's not the end painting, it's a way to get into the painting. You see how much I've covered so quickly, how I've established what I hope is a reasonable design in a really quick way.
My brain works the same way, Michael, so
I'm so sorry.
I know.
And
Mine.
negative painting, though, I think I come from a very left-handed family, a very
Yep.
unusual, large left-handed, and I think negative painting is a thing that belongs with that.
Yes.
I wonder.
I'm left-handed. And
I
it's like,
wonder if I was trained out of being left-handed.
yeah.
Because
No,
I was in special classes as a kid, and You know, we had our special lady teacher who I felt was very abusive as a kid. You know, she literally was telling me that, you know, I'm holding the pencil wrong. I'm doing all these things. So I wonder if I wasn't.
Yeah, I had that too.
Did they slap your hands? They slapped
Yeah,
my,
no, exactly right.
I can write
I'm
on
not-
this. I can write with both hands now.
Oh,
Yeah, I
Wow.
definitely
Me
cannot
too.
do.
but which foot do you kick a ball with? That kind of is an indicator.
Ah.
You left.
Yes, it is.
My-
Yeah.
My grandmother was left-handed and she was forced to do everything right-handed. So when she figured out I was left-handed, she was a tiger. She would not allow anybody to try and teach me how to do it right-handed.
Oh, good. She protected you. I thought
She
you were going to
did.
mean she needed.
Fiercely protected my left-handed dyslexia self.
The
Yeah, I'd be
cartoonist-
curious if left-handedness has anything to do with that or not.
the Society of Cartoonists, 60% are left-handed.
We're the only ones in our right
Interesting.
minds, I'm telling you.
I have a lot of students who are left-handed, and sometimes when they're beginning classes, I notice that they flip everything. So they'll just do like, you know, the clouds on the other side of the canvas and things like that.
That's because
And
you're doing it backwards, Eloise.
yeah, yeah. But
Isn't
in
that all of
my,
Australia though, really?
yeah, well, actually, yeah, we're upside down. Oh, you like that one, Riley?
Yeah.
Yeah. Us in the upside down.
Yeah, it's all backwards when you're left-handed.
All right, I'm not going to overwork this piece too much. You know, I'm hoping you're able to see kind of that big design, the underline. And again, it didn't need to be these colors, right? I could have done it with I could have done it in red, quinacridone red. I could have done it with just black and white with a semi-transparent black, like a chromatic black, or I use a really cheap version of a Payne's gray that really is nice for this. And it comes out looking like a lead drawing almost. Like it just has this
I use that.
beautiful, you know, and then I'm not getting sucked in by these beautiful little glowy bits, which, you know, sometimes, unfortunately, when I want to go in and really work on a painting, I start trying to protect these areas that are, you know, truthfully don't need protecting. You know, I can repaint them. So I have to be careful that I don't make this stage too dear or too beautiful, that I'm afraid to go over and just cover it. But let's go ahead, and I'm just going to quickly show you. So now this one might come into play, and I'm going to look for some of those lights maybe in the foreground, so it's not just a big silhouette, but I'm going to make them much darker than any of these darks back here, but I can still lighten them slightly. And again, these are just notes for myself of, you know, where do I want some transition, some gradation, some sense of movement. And again, just for any of you guys who are new to my classes and things, I am never ever telling you how to paint. I've had enough instructors in my life that are like, you know, to be a good artist, you must do this and that and the other thing. And I just don't believe in that. I believe in just having a lot of tools, having a lot of options, learning what works for you, what's comfortable, and most importantly, what's fun, so that you want to keep painting. You look forward to getting to the easel, right? If painting feels like work,
Yeah.
only, you know, it is hard work. Of course, it's hard work mentally and even physically. But at the same time, we want to make it as enjoyable as possible. I find this type of painting, for me, to be very joyful. I really love the discovery. You know, if you were in here as a spy or a fly on the wall, you'd literally hearing me gasp looking at my own paintings, like, oh, look what happened, or laughing with giddiness, oh, you know, this just happened, or, you know, the opposite of all that a lot of times. But I want the process to be full of discovery, full of play, but at the same
Happy
time,
accidents.
yeah, happy accidents, but at the same time, I'm not just a, full throw paint at the canvas and, I'm not a Jackson Pollock. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not a full abstract painter, but I want to invite abstraction. I want to invite design. I want to invite balance. I want to invite uh, value contrasts, all the different things. And what's great, again, still at this stage, is like I chopped this tree down a little too far. I can just mix up because I'm only using burned or transparent earth red, Indian yellow, and blue. So I can remix these colors very quickly. So I'm just gonna invite this tree to be a little healthier. I don't want this, see how these two are lined up right across from each other? I would rather it has a little bit of a S curve through even the negative shapes.
And an S curve is an armature.
It can be, yeah. And we often think of it as the entrance, the creek, the trail, the path, the road. But you can use an S curve through your clouds. You can use an S curve through your trees. Yes, like you said, it can be an armature at any place, any point in the painting. And it's just an inviting, again, for lack of a better word, sexy lines, right? And again, if that offends you guys, let me know and I'll stop saying it. I just say it because, for one, it's just
Well, it's lines that appeal to you.
right.
And
Yeah.
that, I mean, that's just what everybody calls them.
Would you call it sensual? Would that be a more acceptable word?
I don't know. I think you could use lines you like. I don't know, shapes you like. But again, I know I like Art Nouveau. So I'm looking for those kind of Art Nouveau curves. I'm looking for it to look organic and natural, but at the same time, interesting and inviting.
Well, sex is nature's built-in attractor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
I mean,
that's
every
right.
single species of animal, no matter, there's slugs out there that find other slugs to be sexy.
All right, that's taking it a little farther than I really.
Yeah, but again, so it's what is attractive to us or to us in particular. And yeah, I'll try and figure out a better term again. Let's go ahead and smooth this out and see how it's looking. And then,
Well, I was saying it was a good term. It's appropriate.
And you're
Oh, good.
using a dry brush that's just with a light touch there?
yes, it's that big fan brush, and I do not dip it in paint thinner until the end of the day. I'm only cleaning it by wiping it away. And I don't mind the little bit of muddiness that I get in these stages. I think I get the soft, glowy edges. It's helps me get rid of my big fingerprints here where I'm wiping away with my paper towels.
And when you clean it, do you use the solvent or do you want soap and water? What do you?
I use the paint thinner. I use soap and water once or twice a year. But mostly I just use paint thinner.
Yeah, I have one of these and I used it yesterday with the painting, the water soluble, and then I ended up with a gummy, not particularly easy way of cleaning if I don't use solvent.
Yeah, and I don't know what that means when it comes to water soluble oils. I haven't used them in years and years. I used them when they first came out and they were pretty lousy, but my daughter, so that was 20 years ago because my daughter's 21. So 19 years ago, I was using them in the house for the same reasons that Gail said. I just didn't want my little toddler climbing into my paints, and she was in my studio because I was a stay-at-home dad. And I just thought it felt safer to be using them. But I really didn't like them once I realized she was old enough and probably wouldn't eat too much of my paint or touch it too often. I went back and it felt really nice to go back to it. But I do know that the water soluble oils now are light years better than they were back then. Okay.
This painting
does-
is absolutely glorious. I love the foreground.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So I'm trying to, I know that this is the focal point, but I wanted to invite you to, maybe go up here. Actually, my other photos is my wife standing here because she chose this area to look out over the ocean versus going down this steep path. Like this hillside, actually, to go down to that beach is so steep that there's actually a rope that people use to,
That's
attached to a
interesting.
tree. I'm not happy with this shape and this shape. They're too similar. I think this shape doesn't feel very tree-like. This is kind of okay as a cliff, so that's the nice thing is maybe I can just kind of chop that away. Maybe we get into here to make that, not so solid. You see this tree here, this branch right here on the end. I'm just going to test something and just take it down. Already that feels a little bit better. What happens if we just get rid of it? Open that up. That feels a little better to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got a lot of glow on, whether it's grass or bushes or whatever on the right side that you're missing on the left side. Yeah. I think if you add a little bit of that on that cliff, it'll break
Let's
up
see.
that shape and give you a little more
Yeah.
glow pointing towards your focal point.
Yeah.
I love when we group paint.
What was that?
I love when we group paint.
Me too.
A little here, a little there. I think I learn more from that kind of thing, just from discussing, this will do this or that'll do that.
What I love is you guys never ask for your part of the sale, so it's great. I just get to use all of your insights and wisdom, and then I get to pay for my daughter's college with the sales. So
Yeah, paying for the college. That's when my dentist suddenly began charging and discovering way more things in my mouth that were needing fixing.
yeah.
It's a miracle.
All right. Well, 11 o'clock, and I want to look at your guys' work. I also want to do a little bit of investigation into some of Cheryl's photo references, because I think that's going to be some common issues that we all have. And I want to talk about, what are some choices we can make with good photos, but not great photos, right?
Yeah, please.
Let's get a little bit of glow up here, get back to that Indian yellow. I kind of like it.
I'd be happy with it just the way it is.
Me too.
good.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful it is.
Good, good, good. Hopefully it doesn't dry too much during class so that I can come back and do some of the smaller, boring tweaks. But I think all in all, anyways, the main point was the light and the dark. You guys saw how it was almost a no tan, right?
Mhm.
Even though I was using multiple colors. And then I came back in and divided the lights into 2 values of lights and my darks into 2 values of dark. So now we have a 4-value painting basically, right?
Yeah.
But if you squint your eyes, it still very much feels like a no tan. A big problem a lot of beginning painters will do is like, oh, there's light in the forest over here, right? Like there's that little bit of light coming through, and then we'll just go, right? And it destroys everything.
Yeah.
You see how having a light in the wrong area just looks horrible? I can't believe you guys made me do that. So what's really nice when I figured out that no tan, that lights and the darks, the big shapes, is that now I know I've got a shadow family and I've got a light family, right? And that things are going to stay within the family. The same thing could happen in contrast. If there are some clouds in here that I wanted, and all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, we got some clouds. Look how horrible that looks, right? The value is so far gone that all of a sudden that comes forward, right? It's really fighting.
Yeah, that's been a lesson I kind of learned this summer. I was doing a lot of blocks and trying to do the values. How you nuance each value block has always been real interesting. It's something I've really been struggling with. I've been making some progress, but
absolutely. And that's one of the biggest growth points I've seen in your work over the last year is your subtlety in your values is getting so much better. Where it used to be everything was, you know, bright or dark, you know, even in your really colorful pieces. But within that, looking for that subtlety and that, again, think light family, shadow family, or light area, shadow area, however you want to think about it. Boy,
I'm thinking that I use the word nuance.
Yeah. Yes, it is a nuance, but it has to be a nuance in the right way, in the right place.
No, absolutely.
Sorry, all this just to fix those silly little clouds that I put in there.
Well, I want you to change something along the upper line of the painting. There's too much tree on the upper right.
Okay. Want some light
Right
in
there.
So let me go ahead and squish that out one more time, and then let's carve out some negative shapes, because yeah, that's a good observation. Because now the painting's very heavy, right? It's very lopsided.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can create a bit of a counterbalance, but at the same time, we want to.
Yeah.
And I love it when, you know, one of you guys says something like that, and then all of a sudden I hear all the rest of you going, oh yeah, that's, maybe I didn't have the words, or maybe I'm too nice and don't want to make Mike cry. But I love that, you know, we're feeling it. Maybe we aren't, you know, thinking it in a succinct way, but, you know, probably a lot of you are just like, man, that was a very heavy part. This dark here is also really, really a fighting for focus. So let's see if we can.
Because the trees at the bottom are so tenderly, and then suddenly there was all that weight up at the upper, and I'm going, where
right.
did all that come from?
And I should probably be using Q-tips up here, right?
To the left on the right-hand side, the tree overlooking, yeah, right in there, you see those two dark balls of dark? Yeah, I think you need to break those up somehow. They're just too
Or
symmetrical.
just soften them.
Yeah, soften it around the edges. And to the right of that trunk is another dark circular motion you made right there. Yeah. Nope. A little more to the left. Right next to that, right there. Just soften those.
You all are the artists and Michael is the brush.
That's right.
Guess where we learned how to be the artist? Michael.
Isn't it fun though? And again, because, you know, I'm not stepping back, I'm just staying at the easel. So I'm not seeing it as well as you guys probably are. Like you're able, almost looking at it from a distance, whereas I'm right on top of it.
Yeah, our perspective is a little different.
Right. So you guys are able to see, I kind of like this little bit of emotion here, but it's too strong. But I kind of like that. And, you know, and that just appeared.
Well, will we get to
Anyways, you guys stop me if you're like, okay, we get it. This
will
is
we
getting
get
boring.
to see
Let's
what
get
you
to...
end up, how this one ends up, or do you end up often just junking the demos.
No, if I can fix them, and this one I like. I think this one's worth continuing with, but I guess I always like every painting I'm working on while I'm working on it for the most part.
Definitely a keeper.
And it's been a little while since I've started and finished as a illuminated tones. So that might be fun to push myself a little bit. Yeah, it's going to take some finessing here. One other thing I wanted to show you might be a little bit premature, but is I can just grab these longer soft bristles and let's go ahead and put in, if we can, I want to see if I can't get like an interesting couple branches in here or a tree or whatever else here. So let's, again, excuse my arm getting in the way. So I will almost be touching the canvas with my pinky to keep this, or what I can do is grab my maul stick. You guys all know what a maul stick is? Maul stick is what you lean against the canvas so you don't have shaky hands. I love these back scratchers, extenders, because they grab right onto the edge of the canvas. And now I can have a smooth hand that's a little more.
Yet another great idea. I have one of those for traveling with, and it never occurred to me. What a great maul stick.
Yeah, because they grab onto any side I want. So a lot of times just a couple delicate lines in there. This one got a little heavy up the top, so I'm just going to come in and do some arborist work here and make it a little skinnier, a little lighter. So you see how just breaking up that little space with one kind of nice little turn. Can you guys see that tree or not?
Yeah.
It's fun to have some little delicate shapes amongst.
So you'll do me a favor before you completely abandon this, just while we're still here, you'll step back and look at it. So you'll have to see it from a distance.
What are you thinking I'm going to see? All right. Fun, 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 fun. Let's do the experiment. Boom, lights off.
Wow.
Even better. Now I like
dark. Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right, gang, it is time for a break. And then we're going to come back and look at your guys' paintings and see if we can do some editing with some of Cheryl's paintings to kind of see what that might look like.
Okay.
Great. See you guys in, it's 11:09 my time. Is 5 minutes going to be enough or do we need a little more? I need to run down and get coffee.
No more.
5?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do 11:15. So 5, 6 minutes. See you guys in a little bit.